I'd like to call our special meeting of Mayor and Council to order. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Donald Hewich, Mayor Pro Tempore Margaret Morales,
Present.
Councilmember Mitch Lindemann, Councilmember Dania Acosta, present. Councilmember Ray Shelton,
Present.
Councilmember Michael Valdenegro,
Present.
Councilmember Jose Quijada,
Here.
City Manager Ana Urquijo, City Attorney Dennis Fitzgibbons, City Treasurer Luis Pedrosa, Mayor Pro Tempore, just for the record, Mayor Donald Hewich and Councilmember Mitch Lindemann are excused. The city attorney and city treasurer and the city manager are discussing a matter and should be in short.
Okay, thank you.
And Mayor Pro Tempore, for the record, we have city treasurer Luis Pedrosa present and city manager Ana Urquijo present.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is persons wishing to address the council in writing or verbally on any item not on the agenda. Ms. Andrade, do we have any requests?
No, I do not have any requests.
Okay, thank you. Item number 5 is presentation discussion. Item A is pertaining to establishment of an entertainment district and historic overlay zone in the downtown area. Mr. Osborne?
Yes, order will present. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, and those in attendance tonight. The entertainment district topic dovetails with our efforts in downtown for revitalization. It's an economic development tool for our downtown. It recognizes that we would have or do have a diverse mix of businesses and housing served by cultural, social, and entertainment uses. And we have some of these present, but we also want to see more of these things in our downtown. And so the area that we're considering is contained within the existing historic preservation overlay zoning district is generally suited to the criteria for the entertainment district. And we are also processing right now a change to our historic preservation overlay zoning to actually put uses into that district, whereas presently a line zone that only holds for the actual uses of the properties. And so the context for adaptive reuse of our historic properties in downtown is missing. And we're going to try to put those things back in, which could include visible activities, craft manufacturing, custom bicycle making, custom shoe making, things like that, which currently are considered industrial uses. We would like to bring those back to our downtown. Also, microbreweries and craft distilleries would be considered as part of these changes as well. Going to the Planning and Zoning Commission in public hearing and a regular meeting on March 8th. The entertainment district. It's a challenge and it's an opportunity looking at the statute that controls for alcohol in Title 4, Section 207. The challenge being that there's a restriction of 300 feet from any existing school, whether it's private or public, or any place of worship. The opportunity is that the same section of statute makes for exemptions. But the exemption that we're looking at is the entertainment district and a resolution of council to make that happen. The city council can adopt a resolution with specific geographic impact and focus. And that is what we're suggesting the historic preservation overlay zoning district could be that geography.
Mr. Osborne, may I interrupt for a second? Mayor Pro Tempore and members of the council, the city attorney is connected by Zoom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alana. And so I put up the slide here that actually has the section of Title 4 207A, which is restrictions on licensing premises near school or church buildings and definitions. And so basically it says that a retailer's license is going to be unavailable anywhere within 300 horizontal feet of a school playground, whether it's private or public, or of any place of worship. And so we're looking at the next step for us is not really moving forward from here. I have a little bit of technical difficulty, but the section C4 provides for exemptions in the entertainment district. So on a case-by-case basis, after the city council adopts a resolution, can look at applications for liquor license and make decisions based on criteria that the council would establish. And we may bring forward some of those in a future meeting if it's of interest to the council to do so. But that we could, through the council, allow for locations with licensing for microbrewery, microdistillery, for bars, taverns, brew pubs, or what have you, on a case-by-case basis within the 300 feet distance that the statute in the other section mentions. But our population being less than 200,000, we can only have one entertainment district. And so for us, again, looking at where the opportunity is in our historic preservation overlay district, where we have vacant buildings that are historic, that we want to preserve, find occupants, and encourage them to invest in those buildings. Some of these uses that again support our culture, support our social activity, and also support our arts. These are things that we would like to see. And the definition of entertainment district, it says that it can't be any larger than 1 square mile. The historic preservation overlay zoning district is about 1/4 of a square mile, so it's just 25.25 square miles, and it cannot be less than 1/8 of a mile in width. And with the historic preservation overlay zoning district, it's about 1/2 mile across. What we're looking at right now is limited opportunities. The blue that shown here, and this is the first time I've touched this thing, so I don't know if there's a little laser on it. And maybe I think I've actually found it. It's not really going on the screen. But the blue of this map here is basically the historic preservation overlay zoning district boundaries. The areas that are shown in the salmon pink are parcels within the city that cannot, by current regulation, have a liquor license located there, unless they already have one. So we find that the Gadsden Hotel is one of the properties that is already has a license, but they would not be able to get a license if they were to use it. The Brophy building is another building that could not get a liquor license under the current statute without the adoption of an entertainment district. So you can see there's a significant amount of properties, and I'm actually, if it's okay, I may go over to wherever it can be shown so I can point to this screen, and I'll speak loud enough if somebody can't hear me, just let me know. These here that are purple, these are properties that are selected because of their proximity to churches or church-owned properties. So they're located either with churches or with religious organization-owned properties, and so those have been factored in here as well. You can see there's some colors that are overlapped, and again, that just shows that we have a fairly sizable concentration of schools and religious owned properties in proximity to downtown. But we really, along G Avenue, we only have a few of these properties here that are developed and also available, or could be available to these uses. So you can see a significant amount of the areas where we've actually heard interest from outside parties that we would like to locate the kind of uses that maybe like a craft brewery or a craft distillery. These are opportunities that we denied to them without an entertainment district being. But yeah, again, this is our historic preservation overlay zoning district. If anything outside of that boundary, that would still apply, the state law on, the restriction from the distances of schools and religious facilities would still apply. So anywhere else in the city would still have to basically say, yeah, we can't really allow that kind of use to happen unless it's already there in place. A year ago, it would be again a case by case basis with the council with criteria established through a process that would be featured in the resolution to say these are the conditions or the criteria that would be used to judge whether or not this was an appropriate appropriate location for a liquor license to again facilitate community gathering, cultural activity, arts, and economic development. So those are going to, if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to take them down.
Any discussion by council?
I'm gonna have to, personally, I'm gonna have to study this a little bit more, okay?
Okay.
And
And so, yeah, this is.
we'll
just
get
your-
back to you,
Yeah, this is your first introduction. So I
Yes.
appreciate you guys' patience.
and thank you.
Mr. Grijalva?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I wanted to thank staff because this is something, there's business owners downtown that wanted to know more about this and wanted to really see different options for them. And I know there's a lot of restrictions with the historic district, but if we can accommodate businesses and make it attractive to come to Douglas, I think that's something that we have to look into. So I want to thank staff for their presentation. Hopefully, we, council will be able to attend the presentations that they'll have at the government center. Thank you.
Also, I wanted to mention too, is that the statute also applies to restaurants. So restaurants that serve alcohol, they also currently, if they don't have a liquor license already, they would not be able to locate or have a liquor license in downtown. In many of our places. So the entertainment district would also apply to those particular uses that are primarily restaurant.
Mr. Vandenberg?
Mr. Osborne, you said something about special events on the, your word in there. Would the Elks be able to get, I'm just saying, for instance, the Elks is right across the park, Astro Park on 10th Street. When we have special events there at the park, could they be able, or anybody else, be able to get the license to serve alcohol?
I believe that that's still available as one of the exemptions, the special event. There's a special event exemption in statute in the same section. But most of the exemptions currently apply to those businesses that already have business licenses. And so, but the special event, that's one of the things that's available. So we've again been kind of looking at the long-term economic development for our downtown and how to encourage regular use, regular, to facilitate again, places where people can gather and people can enjoy these things.
Do we have something going on at the Brookie building that you mentioned there?
The Brookie building is within 300 feet of a school and religious.
Right, it's on, it's across the alleyway from
So
the
it's,
street.
yeah, and so it would not be able to get a liquor license if they wanted, if somebody wanted to have, let's say, a billiard room with a bar or a restaurant with a bar, they wouldn't be able to do that.
So we have to relocate the school and the religious worship in order to have.
No, the entertainment district would allow the council to consider the impacts, but also the benefits by criteria that they can establish to say this is a location with a proposed use, whether it's a restaurant with a bar or whether it's a microbrewery with a tasting room or what have you. that this is an appropriate location for it, even given that there are schools and churches nearby.
Thank you for the clarification.
So it doesn't make the schools or the churches go away. It just basically provides the opportunity for a thoughtful consideration of whether there may be some locations where we want to encourage the kinds of things that we're talking about.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Thank you, Mr. Osborne, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 5B is a presentation discussion pertaining to an endowment fund. Ms. Okijo?
Thank you. Starts on the right place here. So if I could just preface this presentation, Mayor, members of the council, by saying that both of our presentations this evening have to do with part of our visioning process that we've been working with Mayor and Council on establishing programs and priorities based on downtown revitalization, economic development, and the future priorities that have been identified. So we'll try and align those as we go along and identify where those are part of all of this discussion. So the next presentation for today, also both presentations are very preliminary. They're kind of planting the seed to come back to you with more research and more recommendations and open it up to maybe further question from Mayor and Council. So we are in the process of conducting research on what requirements are involved in establishing an endowment fund for the city of Douglas. And an endowment fund is basically a legal structure for managing and in many cases indefinitely perpetuating a pool of financial, real estate, or other investments for a specific purpose according to the will of either its founders or donors. So that's just a very high level definition, kind of laying the foundation for what a foundation fund is. When we look at features of an endowment fund, there are quite a few, and we'll start with some of the most common features. They are tax deductible in terms of the donations received, so that's one of their clear benefits. Donations can be either cash or non-cash assets, and some of what I've seen in the research and some of the conversations we have had are real property donations, life insurance donations, so they come in different forms, but I just wanted to specify that they could be cash or non-cash in terms of the assets. The money received is set aside to earn interest or earnings from investment. In this case, for consideration for an endowment fund for the city of Douglas, the city would be the beneficiary as the qualified nonprofit. One of the conversations we did have with an established foundation already was that the municipality does qualify under a qualified nonprofit for an endowment fund purpose. Also, from any donation, typically the principal value is kept intact and that's not utilized for any purpose. And rather the investment earnings from that donation or from that principal is what is used for different purposes and unique purposes based on the donor designation or the type of endowment fund that we established. We also have features that require investment strategies and purposes that would be defined by either the type of fund selected or the established policies that would be designated. And then finally, one of the key features is that there would be a board or commission that would steer or oversee the operation of the endowment fund or the oversight of that endowment fund. So why an endowment fund for a city? Generally, these are for a city, they're more known as community funds rather than charity funds. They carry out purposes and programs for the public good within the city. So this is one way that I've seen the city of Scottsdale operate their endowment fund is they establish grant programs to establish nonprofits within their community for different purposes. Another way is to accept donations for specific purposes as requested by the donor. And some examples, but there are many, could be for cemetery maintenance or care or beautification in perpetuity, or preservation of any community landmark or museum. And again, these are very, very brief examples to kind of lay out the concept, but examples could be many. There are 3 types of endowment funds that we have looked into so far. A restricted endowment seems to be the most common type, and it has principal that is held in perpetuity while the fund's investment earnings are granted per the donor's recommendation. And usually that type of restricted endowment has a donor advised policy or fund that's attached to that. So there's still some designated policy to go with them and possibly some separate reserve funds that could go with that as well. So we, again, this is very high level just for kind of endowment funds 101 today. The other type of endowment that we have been looking at is referred to as a term endowment, where the principal of this type of endowment can be granted, but only after a certain period of time or a certain event. And usually that is typically to allow for growth of an investment is what we have found in our research. And then the third type of endowment fund that we've looked into is referred to as a quasi endowment. And this is also known as a board designated endowment, where funds are or could be funded by the actual organization itself. So the city of Douglas could allow for funds to be the principal, but then in these cases, the principal that is placed into the fund could actually be granted for other purposes at the discretion of a board. And then with the quasi endowments, we are finding that sometimes if those terms are violated, there could be penalties against that actual fund. So again, those are the 3 types of funds that we looked into. There are also an associated set of policies that are identified. The investment policy generally outlines the types of investments that are allowed and an investment manager, how an investment manager is restricted and what goals are set to meeting the return targets. So what we are seeing is that there are many foundations that act as the investment manager, kind of a one-stop shop type of thing. And that's what we have looked at as well, where we wouldn't have to necessarily create a separate investment policy or even hire an investment manager. Those types of foundations do exist where they would just manage all of that for maybe a starting type of fund or something that's smaller in nature than they generally oversee or, where requirements are even larger. There's also policy that would establish the amount an organization or an institution is permitted to take out from the fund at each period or installment, again, based on the needs of that organization, the goals set to the fund, and also, of course, the amount that's in the fund. And then the third type is usage policies that would identify purpose, ensuring, for example, if we have a grant program that the grant is the grant making or issuance of grants are adhering to these purposes and to these policies. And if we're doing any other type, that we're also following with the request of the donors according to those usage policies as well. Endowment funds have the power to address challenges facing communities today, while also honoring the wishes of those who had the foresight to build capital for future needs. So here's just an example of how the initial endowed gift in the first year is just the actual gift amount. And then with investment of those amounts, there's growth, but that growth and the principal is never issued to the community for their programs. Only the proceeds, if you will, or the investment earnings would be issued. So that balance on the, or that principle is still growing, but based on your policies, there's always a threshold that's established so that that continues to grow, but only a portion of it would get granted to the community for their projects. So in this case, it's just a year 1, year 10, year 25. It doesn't mean that your policies would be based that far into the future, but it's just merely an example. Other city endowment funds that we've looked at here in Arizona are the city of Scottsdale. What they have are 2 grant type programs that are run out of their endowment program. One is aimed at human service programs within their community, and the other is for youth programs. And then we did find a Flagstaff Public Library Foundation that exists as an endowment fund. And that one is not a grant program, but goes directly to support projects of their city and county libraries. So recently I noticed that they had projects totaling $17,000 for available monies based on their special project needs. So again, just examples of what some other cities here in Arizona have done with endowment funds. And at this point, we're continuing to do research. This is very preliminary again to kind of plant the seed on the concept of an endowment fund, how it could benefit the city of Douglas. We will come back with more research and recommendations. The preparation and planning for this type of thing is crucial. We have to make sure we have the right designations. We're planning some interactions with some of our legal advisors and bond counsel to guide us correctly on what type of investment foundations, that type of thing would match our needs best. The key goal is to create a platform for giving. There's a marketing component that comes with that. And I think the main thing is to remain proactive so that we don't miss on any opportunity that can arise at any moment when we may have an interested donor toward a very specific purpose in our community. So being able to have this platform available is just a good proactive resource to maintain. And so that's the high-level presentation just to initiate and introduce the concept. If there are any other areas that Mayor and Council feel they'd like us to research, you can always reach out to us separately, or I'm open to any questions today as well.
Mayor and Council, does our council have any questions for the discussion? Thank you, Ms. Ukiho, for your presentation. Next item on the agenda is discussion decision to call for and conduct an executive session under the authority of ARS 38-431.03, A3, A4, and A7 to consider its position, instruct its representatives, and obtain legal advice regarding the bid received for the city-owned Rancho La Paria Apartments, parcel number 410-09-004, and possible preparation of the purchase agreement concerning the potential sale of the Rancho La Paria Apartments. And item 2, under the authority of ARS 38-431.03, A1, to conduct the annual personnel evaluation for the city treasurer and the city clerk. May I have a motion to enter into executive session?
I make a motion, we adjourn to executive session.
Second. I have a motion by Councilmember Shelton and a second by Councilmember Acosta. Any discussion? Not, roll call?
Councilmember Tejada,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Montenegro,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales.
Yes. Let the record show we're entering into executive session at 6:00. executive session.
I make a motion to adjourn executive session.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Acosta with a second by Councilmember Grijalva to adjourn executive session. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales.
Yes. Executive session is adjourned at 7:28 PM. Next item on the agenda is discussion and decision on approval of item A, approval of the Rancho La Paria Apartments bid award submitted by Build Investments LLC and directing staff to proceed with preparing a purchase agreement with all interested parties for the sale of Rancho La Paria Apartments. May I have a motion?
I've got a motion. I move that the mayor pro tem and council grant the Rancho La Paria apartment bid award to Bill Investments LLC and directing staff to proceed with preparing a purchase agreement with all interested parties for the sale of the Rancho La Paria apartments.
May I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Shelton and a second by Councilmember Valdenegro. Do we have any questions or comments by council before we proceed? There being none. Do we have any public requests to speak on this item?
Yes, we have one, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes. Mr. Eric Landick. If you could please just state your name and your residence address for the record.
Yes, my name is Eric Landvik, and I live at 5112 Carmen Drive, CARMON Drive in Windsor, Colorado, 80550.
Thank you.
I'm not sure exactly what it is that you would like to know about me or about the purchase of this apartment, but just to give you a little bit of background, I'm a real estate investor. I've been a real estate broker since 91. And I became interested in Douglas simply because it just seemed like a really nice place. I have investments in other towns, other places in Arizona. And this seemed to me the better place to put the money that I have available. The way that this came about is we started talking about a year and a half ago, or something like that. And we've had discussions off and on with police and Damien and others about purchasing the apartment. Sometimes it included a golf course, sometimes it included the mobile home, the RV park. But we continued with our interest, sometimes a well as well. And I'm in a position right now where I just recently sold a building. And so I have the cash required to do the purchase of this apartment, given the assumption of the loan. And I'm doing this with what's called a 1031 exchange. And 1031 exchange is an IRS code number. It's IRS 1031. And what is the identifying feature of this is that it defers my taxes until I sell the next property. So for me, it's a significant incentive to invest quickly rather than just sit back and analyze the situation and take my time. As soon as my property that just closed, I had 45 days to identify another property to purchase. At the end of that 45 days, I can no longer identify any of the property. So I've had it happen where I have identified, we can identify up to 3. I identified 3, I thought I was covered. For one reason or another, they just kind of fell through, and at the end of 45 days, I couldn't close on any of those properties. So I was stuck. So my MO, or the way that I operate now, is I try to aggressively find someplace that I can invest, to get that lined up as quickly as I can and to get it under contract. So that's kind of my objective. I can tell you anything about me or my business background or whatever, but that's kind of the bare bones of what I'm doing here in this purchase. Any questions?
I've got several, if I can get them out right. Why are you buying this? Is this for an investment for you that you're going to try to flip it in 2 or 3 years, or what's your intentions?
My intention is to hold this, and there's 2 reasons for that. One is I like the long-term prospects of this, and 2 is I like the financing of this. So there's no reason for me to get rid of it. I have in my real estate career done flips. That's just kind of what comes with the territory. But my intention is to hold this. The string of 1031s that led to this included a 21-year hold, a 3-year hold, and a 1-year hold. A 1-year hold was not, I never even marketed the property. Somebody came and made me an offer after reviews. So that's.
What other cities in Arizona do you have property?
I currently have property in Phoenix. I've had multiple, but I currently have 1 there. I currently have another one in Flagstaff. And I've had other properties in Flagstaff as well. And I looked at Tucson, but I'd rather do this here.
Why?
Why?
Yes.
Well, one is I like the long-term prospects of Douglas. 2 is I grew up in a small town. I'm getting to the age where I'm starting to think about, being in a place that I don't have to dodge traffic and et cetera. So Douglas has a lot of really good things in my mind.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Acosta?
Well, thank you for coming into our community. We hope that, your investment is not just in the apartments, but that you consider us as a place to live. We are grateful and hopeful that we get more interest from the outside, and that you truly fall in love with our community, because we are a great community. So thank you for coming, and we'll see where this goes. So.
Thank you.
Yes, my concerns are the management team that's there in place right now that have jobs managing the departments. Are you gonna retain them, or?
Everything has to be evaluated. I haven't gotten to know the management team. I don't know, their personnel. I mean, I've walked the apartments. I think someone here walked me through. But I really need to sit down and get to know people. I'm very much a people person, and I prefer to not make blanket statements about what's gonna happen until I figure out who's there and what they're capable of.
Thank you.
Pro Tem?
Mr. Grijalva?
Thank you. I'd like to put my position in my constituents that are living in those apartments, and there might be some uneasiness and some worry. Is there anything you could say right now to calm their fears, especially if somebody wants to buy our apartments? Is it going to go up? What are your, as far as to calm their fears, what would you tell them?
Well, nothing's gonna change right away. That's first. Secondly, there isn't a market here where I can just say, we're gonna raise rents $500. I mean, it's not gonna happen. I mean, that's not this market. And so, the market forces are really what's going to drive. And they're, looking at the market right now, there's really no driver to raise the rents any appreciable measure. I'm hoping in the future that changes, but let's hope.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Lenick. I appreciate your comments and we wish you best and hope you do fall in love with our community. This is a great place here in Douglas.
Okay, so hopefully we can sign the contract.
Mayor Pro Tem, if you would allow me, I can just give a brief summary about the item just for the
Yes,
public and
yes.
Mayor.
Mr. Barbosa.
So just so that we know the history, on June 25 of last year, 2021, staff prepared a bid packet that included the sale of the municipal golf course, the RV park, and the Rancho La Paria apartments. We advertised per our charter regulations. One bid was received on January 6, 2022, that deviated from the purchase of those three assets, and it was only for the purchase of the Rancho La Paria apartments. The bid came in at $5 million purchase price with the following terms: that there will be a 3% gross sales price. 3% of the gross sales price to be paid to the real estate broker. The buyer would assume the FHA loan held by the seller, which is $3.9 million. So the $5 million would go towards assuming that $3.9 million loan. And the buyer and seller would pay customary costs. With instruction by the mayor and council, we continue to negotiate the price, and basically we came to now the purchase price of $4.85 million, with the broker cost being absorbed by the buyer. Basically, staff is prepared to prepare all the necessary documents to execute the sale, and part of this bid acceptance today. Basically, the revenue of $4.85 million would be applied to fiscal year 21-22. Again, the outstanding mortgage loan amount of $3.9 million would be absorbed by the buyer, and that would leave $950,000 available as revenue to the city.
Thank you, Mr. Barbosa. Thank you, Mr. Lenick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is there anything you'd like to add, Mr. Keeble?
No, I think that gives us the proper direction, and we'll come back with an item with all of that information.
Thank you, Mr. Keeble. Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on this issue? Sure. Come up to the podium, state your name and address, and then we'll have you fill out the paperwork afterwards.
Okay, thank you. My name is Robert Finch. My address is 1201 East Fairway, apartment 237, Paria. Honorable council members, I have a question very quickly. And also just a couple of comments, questions for the gentleman, the purchaser. I've heard some people in the audience wondering, one of the things that I've been wondering also, is someone that was an assistant to a councilman at large for several years, what's the purpose of an executive session if it's not open to the public, and why is it included in the middle of a council meeting?
Madam Mayor, I can take that question. The purpose of the executive session is so council can get legal advice from their attorney concerning various issues that is before the council, whether it be a contract. Tonight, we had one with regards to the bid as it relates to the preparing the purchase contracts that's going to take to go forward with the for the purchase of the apartment complex. We also had an executive session night concerning employment matters. But as it relates to an executive session, council cannot take any action in an executive session. So if the council decides to award the bid tonight, council then will direct staff to prepare a purchase agreement with all the parties involved in this transaction. And that purchase agreement will come back to council. And it could come back in an executive session if they have questions about it. But before they would ever approve the purchase agreement, it would come back in an open meeting where council would vote on it in an open meeting in front of the public. Council can't take action in executive session. They can give direction in executive session, but they can't take action. So that's the purpose of an executive session.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think a lot of people will appreciate that being cleared up. As the gentleman that spoke earlier, I'd just like to say both to him and, people that might not know, my wife and I, we have been living here in Douglas for 9 months. We both lost our jobs due to COVID. We were fortunate enough she was fortunate enough to get work with USDA, and we transferred here. Never been to Douglas, never anything, it was a huge risk. And I think it'd be fair to say that half the complex is government, Border Patrol, CBP, Forestry Service, USDA. And a lot of those people weren't as fortunate as us to have the choice to move here. And a lot of those people are just starting out, GS7s. They're making $35,000 a year. And we're both veterans. We know what it is to be poor. And I would just like to say to the gentleman, I appreciate what you said about not raising rents, hopefully right away. But there are a lot of, it's probably diverse, this community in this apartment complex is anywhere in Douglas. There are older, elderly people on a fixed income. There are college kids. There's good friends with a teacher there. And, none of us are getting rich, but it's a nice complex. We like it there. We all know our neighbors. And I personally went and knocked on 80 doors at 3 o'clock this afternoon to let everybody know, hey, there's a council meeting that no one seemed to know about, and it has to do with our apartment complex. I know it's posted out there in the box, but no one seemed to know about it. We only found out about it secondhand on Facebook, literally at like 3:30. And I went and knocked on every door in that apartment complex just to let people know, hey, this is happening. And if you're interested and you like living here like we do, please come. And my wife and I are the only ones that showed up. So I appreciate coming here and letting us know what's happening, because there are a lot of people that want to know. So, thank you for choosing to invest in Douglas. Honestly, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Finch. Any further discussion? Oh.
Good evening, my name is Marianne Perron. I reside at 1815 East Fifth Street. Good evening. I just wanted to ask, because through everything mentioned, I don't know if there was an appraisal done on the building before being sold.
You want to answer that, Mr.
Ms. Federal, and the other members of the council, not for this transaction, there was no appraisal done.
then, and I don't know if the attorney can answer this, but isn't that against the law? I thought we needed to have an appraisal before a property was sold. Because how do we know, or how does council know that you are getting a fair value price for the property? So that is my question.
Would you like to answer that?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Council has the right to determine what they believe is a fair value for property. Council doesn't always have to go out for an appraisal. So it's a decision of council. I don't know of any specific statute that requires council to get an appraisal before it sells real property.
But sir, how would the city council know if this is the appropriate amount?
And ma'am, I think that's, I think that's, those are all fair questions you have, but I think council that this property has been open for a bid. I think Mr. Pedrosa went over how long the bid had been open and the bids that had been received. And I think based on the bids after almost a year, council, well, we'll find out once council votes, but council has determined that this is a fair and appropriate bid if council approves it.
Yes, sir, and I understand what you're saying, but I don't see what basis they have, or if the city has provided anything congruent with apartments of this size. And so that was my concern, so.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I
Mr.
may add.
Barroso? Yes, please.
So there's, what we did was perform a financial analysis of the revenue capabilities of the property and as well as the expenditures involved. Knowing those, how much revenue the property generates, as well as the expenses that go out, and the mortgage associated with the property of $3.9 million, the property is able to generate only such revenue. And in last year's, according to last year's audited financials, it was about $12,000 net revenue. So the purchase price is we feel is not something that is out there too much. Trying to find the right word, but it's in line to what the apartments are able to sustain, bring in revenue as far as how much capacity. There's 80 units, $600,000 a year in revenue, and almost the same in expenses. So we figured that a purchase price of about netting close to about $1 million to the city was a fair consideration to bring up to council.
One other question. How many years is it going to take now to finish the loan so that it can be paid off?
Mr. Shelton, the loan was just refinanced in 2020 for, I believe it's an additional 30 years. So it's around 30 years from 2050 where the mortgage would be paid off.
Thank you.
No further discussion? Roll call?
We have some.
We have someone else? Oh, okay.
My address is 1201 East Fairway Drive, apartment 160. I live at the property as well, and understand the property manager. And I would like to address the investor. Some of my questions were answered in regards to the rent. I was concerned about the tenants and raising the rent. Also about the property management. But I'm more concerned about my crew, the maintenance people that work at the property that have worked there for 17 to 18 years. So I'm concerned, and I'm glad that you are a people person and that you will try to get to know them, because I am concerned for their future and their job security. I'm sorry. Thank you for considering that.
Thank you, Ms. Salazar. Have her fill out a form. Any other participation from the public? Does the council members have any additional questions? No? All right. There being no further discussion, and roll call, please.
And just for the record, Mayor Pro Tem, we have the motion by Councilmember Shelton and second by Councilmember Paria. Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Montenegro,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales.
Yes. Motion carries. Item number 8 is an adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn council meeting?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second. A motion by Councilmember Shelton and a second by Councilmember Acosta. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. We stand adjourned at 7:54 PM. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys. Have a nice evening.